This is James from Funder Intel, and I just got back from Albany, New York, where I spent the morning in court, the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of New York, to be precise. And I was there to watch Kris Roglieri plead guilty to a charge of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. For those of you who have not been following this case, Mr. Roglieri was the owner of a company called Prime Capital Ventures, LLC. He had five indictments handed down on wire fraud charges, and more recently, a superseding indictment for the conspiracy to commit wire fraud was handed down. It was a Ponzi scheme, as it turns out. The whole gist was that he would take proceeds from clients, which were theoretically interest payments, and he put them into an account which was called the ICA, which is interest credit account. So this account was supposedly for monies that were going to be put towards interest payments on significant commercial loans that he promised his clients. And it turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. So, as per the classic Ponzi scheme, Mr. Roglieri would take monies from clients, roll them into this account, the ICA account, which again were supposedly intended for future interest payments. And he would use those monies for his own personal gain and also use some of the monies to pay off older clients as the newer funds would come in from newer clients. Mr. Roglieri had five counts of wire fraud, which he was indicted for, and had pleaded not guilty to all five charges. He had named a venture capital fund. He was pawning off blame on them, saying that it was them who had defrauded him or who had been dishonest with him, and they didn't really have the funds to loan to these clients. But that turned out to be just a red herring. It was Mr. Roglieri who was solely taking the funds in, using them for personal gain, and also using them to pay off older clients so as to evade the appearance of the fraud, which was ongoing. So he had stood firm by his claims, by his plea of, or his assertion, pardon me, of being not guilty. And then a couple of months ago, or should I say in June of this year, a couple of co-conspirators came out and pled guilty to wire fraud charges. So I was in court today to hear him enter his plea of guilty. The plea of guilty, again, was only on the one superseding charge of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Mr. Roglieri entered the courtroom shackled in handcuffs and a prison-issued outfit with the name of the penitentiary emblazoned on the back of his T-shirt. He chatted very casually with his attorneys until the judge came in, and there was no emotion shown in the courtroom. There was no outbursts from the gallery. There were about 20 people present, I would say. Mr. Roglieri spoke clearly, answered the judge's questions. He understood the charges. He understood that pleading guilty would result in a sentence that could not be appealed. And he admitted that he was indeed guilty of the charges that were brought by the prosecutors in this case. The initial potential penalties for Mr. Roglieri: possible maximum penalty, 20 years in prison, $250,000 fine, and 3 years supervised release. The prosecution offered the projected guidelines for his sentencing. And the projected guidelines for sentencing, as stated by the prosecution, were this: restitution to be paid to the victims, forfeiture of items, and there are numerous luxury cars and a luxury watch and a Virginia vacation home that have been seized and are going to be forfeited and sold in order, most likely, to pay that restitution to the wronged clients. And as far as his prison sentence is concerned, again, these are projected guidelines. The prosecution in this plea has offered him 97 to 121 months, about 8 to 10 years. So he's getting a little bit of a deal here, it would seem. So the proceedings today were very businesslike, very matter of fact. The judge kept things rolling right along. The proceeding lasted about an hour, not because of any slow going procedurally, but because the prosecution laid out Mr. Roglieri's scheme in great detail, and it lasted quite a bit. It took up the preponderance of the 1 hour that the hearing lasted. So the sentencing, the actual sentencing, is scheduled for March 11th at 10 a.m. The judge does have leeway in terms of whether or not she will abide by the projected guidelines set forth by the prosecution. As I sat in court, the judge did not betray whether or not she thought that the offer from the prosecution was too lenient, or whether or not she would stray from the guidelines that were offered by the prosecution. It seemed to me, just, and this is pure conjecture based on her body language and her tone, that she would probably go along with what the prosecution had offered. But again, that's just a guess. That's just based on my reading of the judge. But she was very matter of fact. She betrayed no animus or anger towards the defendant. But then again, she may have just been being professional. So we shall see what comes down on March 11th in terms of whether or not the judge agrees with the guidelines offered by the prosecution. So that is where the Kris Roglieri case stands at the moment. And as an aside, and as just a human being, and one is left scratching their head at how he thought he was going to actually get away with this. The thing unraveled very quickly. This whole scheme started in 2022, and here we are, 2025, and it's all unraveled. It only took a matter of a couple of years, now 3 years, and we have a guilty plea in this case. Cautionary tale for sure, and a great example of what greed can do to a human being.